For years now, Luton Town have been England's favourite underdog, at least generally speaking. They've gone from being in non-league obscurity to fighting a Premier League relegation battle in the space of about 10 years. However, post the relegation of last season, the Hatters have really struggled, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch as well, in terms of they've made some bad decisions in terms of people that they're bringing in. They've sold players for not too much money, and it's really having a knock-on effect this season. So in today's video, ladies and gents, I'm going to be delving into the problems both tactically and financially in terms of, again, outgoings and incomings that are going wrong with Luton Town and that have caused such a dramatic fall off this season from the unique and united side that we saw last season to a side that now sit just 1 point above the Championship relegation zone. First up, I think that we've got to start by laying the foundations of kind of just how bad Luton Town have been for large spells this season and in pretty much the vast majority of their games, by starting off with looking at the underlying data. As of right now, Rob Edwards' side sit 21st in the Championship. They've scored the 4th lowest amount of goals with just 0.9 per match, conceded the 5th most goals, conceded the 10th most XG, and have created 18 big chances, but have only scored 8 goals. If we compare that to last season in the division above, Luton averaged 1.4 goals per 90, whilst also creating 1.7 big chances per 90, just 0.3 less than they've averaged in the Championship so far this season, which when you factor that they were playing in the Premier League, you know, they were playing against the likes of Liverpool, Manchester United, even Brighton every week, to go into playing, you know, Plymouth Argyle, with all due respect to them, you'd expect there'd be a lot bigger of a gap in terms of how many chances they were creating this season compared to last season, considering they're playing a division below. But there's not. As I said, there's just a 0.3 difference. However, they did concede a lot of goals, with an average of 2.2 being conceded, and they also conceded a whopping 79.8 XG over the course of the season. Which, when we compare to this season, they've not been as bad defensively, but I do still think there's some big gaping issues, and to be fair, I wouldn't say it was necessarily about being bad defensively last season. It was just, you know, a lot of teams have a lot higher quality, and Kaminsky was performing absolutely out of his skin last season. As he said, you know, they conceded just under 80 expected goals, and Kaminsky kept quite a few of them out. However, they did still concede over 2 goals per game, which is quite high. And again, as I said, it's not as high this season, but things are still not great. So what has happened? Because these stats suggest that they're not as creative as they once were, and they're also not being anywhere near as clinical as they were in the Premier League. Well, to start off, we've got to look at the departures at the club this summer. All of Gabriel Osho, Chiedozie Ogbene, Ross Barkley, Ryan Giles and Andros Townsend departed the club for an estimated net fee of £17.3 million, which, when you compare to the estimated £90 million Burnley made and the £38 million Sheffield United made, Luton didn't make too much money, or at least not enough to bring in bags of quality without some pretty substantial internal club investment, which, to be fair, that's not a Luton Town thing. You know, they've not necessarily been the money bags in any of the leagues that they've been in. However, I feel like with that Premier League money coming in, they could have possibly done with digging a little bit deeper into the pockets, and that's not necessarily Luton as a club, obviously, but I mean more so the owners could have tried to maybe put a little bit more in. However, with the limitations of building a new stadium, probably made things a little bit hard for them. And as I said, didn't make all too much from player sales, despite losing quite a few very valuable players. It's a bit hard for Luton here, to be fair. They were stuck between a rock and a hard place. However, that doesn't excuse the fact that this summer's business was nowhere near good enough. I want to start off with the biggest departure this summer, and that's obviously Ross Barkley. And I mean, he was always going to go, let's be honest. He was never going to stay and come to the Championship with Luton. He was always going to leave. However, you would have kind of hoped they maybe got a bit of a better fee. I don't know what the contract details were, I'll admit, but I feel like they could have probably got a little bit more money. And if not, then they had to replace him with someone with the same creative kind of ability, the passion, the tenacity, the ability to receive under pressure, and all them things cost you a spenny bit of money, which didn't cost Aston Villa that much. And that's where I think Luton Town have gone massively wrong here. Barkley created the second most big chances in the Luton squad last season, averaged 3.58 shot creating actions per 90, and also provided the second most assists in the squad as well. However, Barkley's contributions weren't just the fact he was a direct threat in terms of creating chances, he was just a general danger man across the pitch, with his big distance switches, his brilliant ball carrying, and obviously his ability to receive under pressure. So as we've already touched on about that kind of creativity issue, and it necessarily isn't worse than last season, but considering they've dropped to the Championship, I feel like you would expect to have a much higher volume of big chances and, you know, chances being created in general. So I think the loss of Ross Barkley massively plays into that, and I feel like, not just my opinion here, but probably 99% of the Luton fan base, I'd assume, will see this as being, you know, 3/4 of the reason they're not creating chances is the fact they lost Ross Barkley. And if not 3/4, then at least half the reason. He was a massive creative outlet for them, and just an all-round progressive outlet for them, and they've not been able to replace it. So how have they replaced him? Who have they brought in to kind of shoulder some of that creative weight? Well, they've not really replaced him, to be honest. You know, they partially have, maybe. They brought in loanee Tom Krause. I think that's how you say his name. I'm not 100% sure, and I apologise if I've said that wrong, but I believe it is Tom Krause, and to be fair, he's done a decent job. He's got a goal and an assist. He's doing all right. I'm not saying he's necessarily the replacement for Ross Barkley. I'm not convinced by that, but I think that, considering they were already losing Lokonga, obviously his loan ending from Arsenal and him going to the La Liga, meant they already had to get a midfield body to come in and replace just that gap. Even if Lokonga only played 19 games in the Prem, they still had to fill that gap in the squad. So then they've also got kind of that creative way to be replaced on Barkley. And again, I'm not saying Tom Krause is definitely that replacement. You know, Luton fans, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that he may be the guy that they've brought in. And as I said, he's doing okay, but all them things that Ross Barkley brought into such a high level, they were going to be so hard to replace, and considering they got what I believe is around 5 million for him, they needed to get more, and if they weren't going to get more, then they had to invest massively into bringing in a real asset, because he was a large part of the reason that Rob Edwards' system worked last season, because he was up and down, he was contributing on both ends of the pitch, and although his defensive numbers weren't necessarily out of this world, he was still contributing in all thirds of the pitch, and that meant that the system of having them two midfielders in that, what was really a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-2, it worked, and this season, it's just not clicking the same. Chiedozie Ogbene's departure was also absolutely massive, especially considering it happened so late on in the window, meaning they actually had to go and get his replacement, 33-year-old Victor Moses, over a week after the window had shut as a free agent. Now, from what I've seen, Moses has done a decent job, and in fairness, isn't really a bad sign in the grand scheme of things. I genuinely think that signing someone with his experience, his still distinct qualities, is a pretty good signing. It's a promotion level signing. However, when you consider he's the Ogbene replacement, it becomes a lot lower down in terms of how you rank him as an actual signing. So I think that this kind of sign of Victor Moses screams to me as a bit of a panic signing. And again, I said it is a solid signing. It's a really solid signing, in fact, for a championship side. However, I feel like, to me, they were hoping they'd hold out and keep Ogbene, and didn't really have a backup plan in place if Ogbene was to leave, which has obviously caused them to have to act so late and trigger that free agent market and go into there and get Victor Moses. Had they maybe just accepted selling him a little bit earlier and had time to really get someone of maybe a little bit younger, maybe a little bit more, I don't know, a bit more flair, a bit more quality about them, and then also sign Victor Moses, we could be in a different position here, speaking about Luton. However, again, as I said, I do feel like it was a little bit of a panic signing because they lost Ogbene so late on. However, I know we've slated this Luton Town transfer window, but they did still spend a respectable, but still estimated £13.7 million, which is, you know, that's a decent, really decent budget for a championship club. But if we look at who they actually brought in, a lot of the money went on Mark McGuinness, and if his early performances are anything to go by, he's not going to be worth the fee at all, really. Like, watching him against Sheffield United, specifically that Jesser and Raksaki first goal, he does pretty poorly, and Raksaki kind of just, with 2 touches, is in, and McGuinness doesn't put up much of a challenge. And now, that is just one instance, but from everything I've read on Luton Town and the things I've watched, I just really don't feel like he is necessarily up to the standard. And that is harsh early doors. He could still definitely come good. You know, he's still young. I think he's 23 years old. However, I spend a large part of your fee as a club probably hoping to bounce straight back to the Prem. doesn't seem like smart business. Now though, I want to move away from maybe individuals and look at more so on the all-round setup and the all-round team for a moment. I put a tweet out about this video and I was instantly met with a few replies from Luton fans, with this one being from LTFC_JT saying, "There's been a transition from scrappy, aggressive, counter-attacking football to more controlled, passing and possession dominance." So I'm going to kind of break this down a little bit. I'm going to delve into this because I'm going to use this as my foundation to bounce off of and discuss my thoughts on Luton, kind of the way they're setting up and the way they're positioning themselves when having the ball. Now, although they're not averaging a crazy amount of possession with 48.2% in games this season, it is still a 6% increase from the possession they were averaging in the Premier League, and is a 3% increase on what they were averaging in the Championship promotion season back in 2023. So although it is very, very marginal, I do see where this Luton Town fan is coming from, and it does signify that there has been a change, maybe a little bit more reliant on having the ball a bit more. And although that's for some people is a positive change, for Luton, the team that have always been known as being the underdogs, the scrappy lads who fight their way through games, it's not positive for them. And to be fair, it's also backed up when we look at their passing statistics. They're averaging the least amount of long balls since the 2019-20 season, with just 22.3 per 90 in this championship season. Now, I do just want to emphasise the fact that this is a smaller sample size in the seasons that we're previously talking about. You know, them 19-20, the 2021, the 21-22, 22-23, 23-24, all them seasons are across, obviously, a full season, whereas right now, we're kind of judging Luton on what is 8, maybe 9 games in the Championship, so you kind of have to, like, you know, take your opinions here with a pinch of salt. However, it's the best look that we can get, and I do think that the stats that we're seeing are accurate of how Luton are playing and the things that they're trying to do. So it does give you a good judge on kind of the changes in system and the changes of style, which are, as Luton fans have made it clear to me on Twitter, are causing a bit of unrest. Again though, the change isn't absolutely massive. They're still averaging the 5th lowest accurate passes per match in the Championship with 274 per game, but that is still significantly higher than their 230 per game average in the Championship back in the 22/23 season. So therefore, the moral of the story for me in terms of Luton in possession and how they're trying to dictate games is that they are trying to keep the ball a little bit more, but it isn't a total and complete shift from what they were doing beforehand. However, there's still a fairly significant difference in passing choices and the volume of passes, as the stats we've just looked at tell us. Now though, I want to transition to maybe looking at a few more visual representations of Luton's team. And now again, this is a small sample size, I've already said, so again, take it with a small pinch of salt, but from the games I've watched back from last season and the games I've watched from this season, these are things that I've been able to pick out to kind of try my best to show you the difference. Looking at the average positions from Luton Town's last Championship win and their last Premier League win, you see that there's a clear and distinct set of positions in their Premier League game against Bournemouth, and to me, it suggests that all the players are 100% certain of their roles. There's even space in between players, and again, it is average positionings, but from looking at this, it tells me there's even spacing, people know their duty, you've got Doughty high and wide, but you've still got that solid back line, and you've kind of just got, you know, it looks very even, it looks very, very organised. Yet, if you to compare this to the game against Sheffield Wednesday and them average positions, it feels just a lot more congested, with players much more squeezed in and more compact, which to be fair, is probably indicative of the fact that they're trying to play that more possession-heavy approach, slightly, but it also suggests that maybe a few players don't know what they're doing. There's a few players almost overlapping here. It shows that for me, and it tells me, especially when I partner that with watching a few Luton games, that players just aren't 100% sure of their roles. And that again comes into the fact that the squad's not necessarily been built for this. The Luton squad is, I don't want to say out of their depth, because they're not, these are professional footballers, but this isn't the type of football that they're built for. This squad's not built to be playing this type of football that Rob Edwards is trying to play, and therefore they're struggling a little bit as a result. Continue this if we start by comparing these two out of possession setups, starting off with Sheffield United this past weekend. Luton are set up higher and more of a flat 4-4-2. However, for me it feels like the spacing just isn't right or correct for what it should be. Or maybe they just don't have the correct personnel to play in this 4-4-2. I feel like the defensive setup would automatically look better if it was the more deep block 5 at the back we were used to seeing last season. For example, looking at this clip from the game against Burnley, in which which that back five is very set, and it was in practically every defensive moment of last season. Now, as I've said before, we are judging Luton off a small sample size of games, and I feel like I don't want to be overly generalising them, because to be fair, at times they still have that back five if we look at this screenshot against Plymouth, but it's still not as deep, and you can see that. As we've already established, they are showing signs of a team that want to get on the ball more often, and therefore do have a slightly higher line, which in my opinion just isn't something that, as I've said before, the Luton squad have kind of the capabilities to do. You know, they can do it, obviously, again, the professional footballers, but Luton aren't necessarily built to play that high line. They want to be camped in the box. The good box defenders in that back line, they know how to win them aerial duels and defend their own box. When they're forced to play a little bit higher, people get joy of getting isolated 1v1, taking players on, getting into the box in dangerous positions, like I feel like Sissoko really took advantage of when he played against Luton Town. I think, did he score 1, maybe 2 goals? And Luton couldn't handle him. This deeper, inside your own box defending is what Luton specialise in. You know, that gritty, bodies on the line, defend until the death. That is Luton Town. That is Luton Town. I've also heard a few things about Rob Edwards allegedly being stubborn and refusing to change things, which I do think is pretty harsh on him. You know, I think that he's not necessarily a bad manager. He's having a rough spell, in my opinion. However, I'm not a Luton fan. I don't watch Luton every week. So, you know, again, take my opinion with a pinch of salt. However, something that I have noticed being a sign of this stubbornness is his persistence with Elijah Adebayo. Last season, Adebayo was absolutely unbelievable. He scored 10 goals from an XG of 6.7, and his all-round hold-up play and ball distribution was just incredible. He won 2.73 aerial duels per 90 last season and scored 0.63 goals per 90. However, this season he's been incredibly poor. The centre-forward is yet to score despite having an XG of 3.44. I mean, the other night when Luton were on TV, I was convinced just he was like allergic to the back of the net. He really did not want to put the ball in the back of the opposition's net, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's something Rob Edwards is telling him. I don't know if it's Elijah Adebayo himself, but I do feel that Edwards has to make a change, whether that's dropping him out for a few games or changing the way they're building to maybe accommodate him a little bit better. I'm not too sure. But Adebayo is really having a poor start to this season. It's not what I don't think anyone expected. I mean, there was people saying that in the Premier League saying they would have liked him at Everton or Crystal Palace or something like that. However, it looks like, for me, he's lucky to be at Luton right now. But he has only played with his strike partner Carlton Morris in just 3 of 9 league games, and that could possibly be part of the reason why he's not performing too well. We know they formed a really nice strike partnership last season. Obviously, Adebayo scored double-digit goals, but more importantly, he was playing with Carlton Morris consistently, and they were bouncing off each other. I know when they played against Burnley at Turf Moor, that kind of connection of, I think Adebayo jumps up and knocks over James Trafford, Carlton Morris is there for the rebound, and that kind of fiery, thuggery type partnership, and I mean that in the best way possible, works really well. And as I've said, they've not really played together all that much this season. Nevertheless though, he's been really poor, and things need to change either on behalf of Rob Edwards or Elijah Adebayo if Luton are to succeed in front of goal. All round though, I think that Luton have had a really poor start. Do I think Rob Edwards should get the sack? Not just yet. I feel like they could and probably should persist with him. I know, again man, I know that these changes are annoying for Luton fans, and I know that the results have been really poor, but I do think he has deserved the right to turn it round. You know, he did take Luton up, and he did put in a fair solid fight in the Premier League considering he had limited resources. So I think just, you know, maybe another 6 games. Just give him that and back him, because I do think he could turn it around. And if he doesn't, then the managerial market is going to be rough for Luton, and who they're going to go for, I'm not too sure. Maybe looking at someone like Ruben Sellers at Reading could possibly be a shout, but I feel like you need a gritty manager. So maybe, I don't know where Michael Duff is at the moment, maybe looking at someone like him, he feels very Luton. But yes, nevertheless, I think Luton Town have struggled, that's apparently clear. I think that the changes in system are part of the reason, although them changes aren't too crazy just yet in my opinion. So things do need to change for Luton. They need to revert back to what they know, the aggressive, deep line that they just become really hard to beat, rather than trying to be a team that can batter every single team with their style of play. But anyways, ladies and gents, if you have enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe. Luton fans, please let me know what I've missed out. Obviously, I've filmed and recorded this video all in one day, actually in all in about 4 or 5 hours. Really busy. So please do let me know if I've missed stuff out, because I inevitably will have done. And if you have enjoyed, as I said, leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.